You know that feeling, that moment of pure panic when you discover water somewhere it shouldn't be? It's chaos. But what if you had a clear plan? Well, in this explainer, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break down the anatomy of a water damage crisis and turn that panic into action.
So let's start with the single most important question you could ask, because the answer starts a clock ticking on any water emergency. Honestly, knowing this is the difference between a pretty straightforward cleanup and a major health hazard.
That's it. You've got 1, maybe 2 days. See, mold spores are literally everywhere, all the time, just waiting. All they need is moisture, and materials like drywall or insulation become a perfect breeding ground. This is your critical window to get ahead of the problem.
Okay, so why the huge rush? Well, it's because the real issue isn't the puddle you can see. No, it's all about the hidden journey that water takes once it gets inside your property.
And look, water can get in from just about anywhere. You have the really dramatic stuff, right? Like a pipe bursting in the middle of a winter freeze. But then you have the silent killers, like an old washing machine hose that finally just gives up. And of course, you've got storms, leaky roofs, the list goes on.
This is so important to understand. Water is a traveler. It loves to migrate. It'll wick its way up drywall, seep under your baseboards, and soak the subfloor and insulation deep inside your walls. What you can see is often just the tip of the iceberg, while the real threat to your home structure is growing completely out of sight.
All right, so you've just found water. What you do in these first 60 minutes is absolutely vital. I mean, it can literally save you a fortune in repairs down the road.
So here it is, your 4-step playbook. Number 1, if you can do it safely, find and shut off the main water valve to your property. Step 2, get on the phone and call a professional restoration company immediately. 3, start moving furniture, rugs, anything valuable out of the water to stop them from getting soaked. And last but most important, stay safe. Water and electricity are a deadly mix, so stay away from outlets and appliances.
You know, it's fascinating how the pros look at this. They break their response into 2 totally different phases. The first is mitigation. Think of this like emergency triage, stopping the bleeding. They're extracting water, setting up drying equipment. Then, and only after everything is dry, does restoration begin. That's the actual rebuilding part.
This brings us to the real core of the professional process. Getting a building properly dry, it's not about just setting up a few fans from the hardware store and hoping for the best. It is a genuine science.
See, professionals don't guess. They follow a super rigorous set of guidelines called the IICRC-certified standard. This thing is basically the Bible for water restoration. It's a science-based approach that tells them exactly how to measure moisture and where to place equipment to get the best results. It completely takes the guesswork out of the equation.
And a huge part of that science is the equipment. It all starts with these absolute beasts, truck-mounted extractors. These things can pull thousands of gallons of water out of a property in a really short amount of time. This is step 1. You have to get the bulk of the water out, and you have to do it fast.
Okay, once all that standing water is gone, they bring in these high-velocity air movers. They are placed strategically. They don't just blow air around randomly. The goal is to create a powerful, consistent airflow right across the wet surfaces, like your floors and walls, which massively speeds up evaporation.
But wait, where does all that moisture in the air go? Well, that's where these machines come in. Industrial dehumidifiers are the real workhorses here. They suck all that moisture right out of the air, creating this intensely dry environment that literally forces the trapped water to come out of materials like wood and drywall.
And just so you know, this is not an overnight fix. A typical drying job takes anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And notice that part about daily monitoring? That's key. Technicians come back every single day to take moisture readings, track the progress, and tweak the equipment to make sure everything is drying exactly as it should. All right, let's talk about the part that can feel just as stressful as the water itself. The money, the costs, and the insurance claims. Let's break down what actually matters here.
So here's a concept that is absolutely crucial. Not all water is created equal. The pros classify water into 3 categories. Category 1 is clean water, from a broken supply line. Category 2 is gray water, which might have some contaminants like soap. And then there's Category 3, black water. This is the bad stuff, sewage, floodwater, and it's highly contaminated.
The final price tag really comes down to a few key things. A Category 3 cleanup is always going to be the most expensive because of the health risks involved. Of course, the sheer size of the affected area matters, as do the types of materials. Saving a hardwood floor is a lot more complex than just ripping out some carpet.
Now, let's talk about insurance, because this is a big one. Most standard policies will cover sudden and accidental damage. Think of that burst pipe or the washing machine hose that failed. What they typically do not cover is damage from slow, gradual leaks or flooding that comes from outside your home. For that, you usually need a separate flood policy.
So finally, let's bring this all together. Let's look at the complete roadmap professionals use to take your property from a state of emergency all the way back to how it was before the loss ever happened. It really is a clear three-stage process. First, they assess the damage with their meters and get all the standing water out. Second, they create and execute a scientific drying plan with that daily monitoring we talked about. And third, they verify with their instruments that the structure is 100% dry before any rebuilding starts. If there's just one thing you take away from all this, let it be this. Dry is not a feeling, it's a number on a meter. A real pro doesn't guess if a wall is dry, they measure it. That final verification is your absolute guarantee that you won't have problems like hidden mold showing up down the line. And at the very end of it all, you get the proof. You get all the paperwork, the detailed documentation, including those daily moisture logs. This proves to you, and more importantly to your insurance company, that the job was done correctly and your property is truly back to a safe, dry standard.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Going through a water disaster forces you to be reactive. But once it's all over and your property is dry and safe, the real question becomes about being proactive. What can you do now to make sure this never ever happens again?